And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, and then just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror. And welcome to Slasher Fest. I've chosen some a little out of the way slashers. Slashers are my favorite subgenre of horror. I like formulaic, cloney slashers. Call me lowbrow if you want. I'm going to start wearing that as a badge. But, yeah, so I picked out some slashers here and there that I want to spotlight and have fun with, because I had fun with them. And we're going to start off Slasher Fest with hashtag all my friends are dead. Yes, we are. Hashtag all my friends were dead. It was actually on my top list. My top 10 best of the 2024 was actually 22 films. And I think this was like 21 or something like that. But all my friends are dead. I had so much fun with this movie. It's very formulaic. I have the DVD because there is no Blu-ray release, and I got tired of waiting for one. Maybe they'll come out with one day and I can get it. Otherwise, it's that little thing that's going on where people are just releasing DVDs like it's 1986 again. I don't really get it, but there you go. It is what it is. So, yeah. Now, this movie opens with some news reports about 7 kids, or young adults, who were murdered at Karmapalooza in 2004. So we see all of these things, these news reports from that time, the 20th anniversary of these serial murders that took place in 2004, and all of the victims were very theatrically displayed in the 7 deadly sins. So this serial killer was known as the SDKS 7 SDSK killer, 7 deadly sins killer. So Karmapalooza has not taken place since then because of it, but they are finally returning in 2024 to do Karmapalooza again. And that's when we are introduced, we see also some flashback videos of a girl named Colette, who apparently tops herself in a shack, in a cabin. You don't really understand what that's all about, but that took place 2 years ago, and so it's 20 years after the 7 deadly sins killers, 7 murders. And it's 2 years since that girl topped herself, apparently. And we are introduced to our little group. We have Sarah and Mona and Will, LB, Aaron, Guy, and Liz. Or Liv, like Liv Tyler, Liv. So they're preparing to go to Karmapalooza. And we are introduced to all of this colorful social media. I like the atmosphere of this movie. I like the cinematography of this movie. It's all very, social media and bright colors, and it's just, I enjoyed that movie. I enjoyed the aesthetics of this movie. The color palettes are purples and blues, neon purples and blues and pinks and stuff like that. And I like these characters as well. You hate who you're supposed to hate. You can't stand who you're supposed to can't stand. Well, actually, you can't stand them all, but then it's supposed to be that way, So, they end up getting in the van, and they're taking off. So you have 6 of them. The other one is Aaron, and he is a pharmacist, or a pharmacy assistant, and they want him to steal some drugs and come later, So these 6 are taking off, and they're going down the road when a really violent tire blowout occurs, and they're standing there on the side of the road wondering what the hell to do when a cop pulls up. And this scene is absolutely hilarious. You know what I mean? This is definitely a horror comedy, but this scene is absolutely hilarious because when the cop pulls up, they're all flushed with dope. You know what I'm saying? And because of all the changing laws and everything, nobody really knows what should be hid and what is okay to have. So, you've got Guy, he's like got this big giant bag of bud, a big bag of bud. It's not a quarter bag, it's like fucking half a kilo or something. I mean, he's got a lot of dope. And he's got all kind of vape pens, THC vape pens, not nicotine. And so he's like, he doesn't know what to hide. And he's like, and it's a lady cop, and she gets out and she's like, what's going on? And we had a blowout. Oh, I can get a garage to come and help you. Now, in the meantime, while she's doing that, they're all freaking out because of all these drugs they got on them. And Guy is like hiding them. Now, here's the problem. LB, and they're even asking each other, like guys like going, do I need to hide this? Is this legal or not legal? I mean, I don't know, what to hide and what not to hide. And then one of them actually looks at LB and says, I do know one thing to hide, and that's all that MDMA that you got on you in that big bag, cocaine and stuff. So that you definitely need to hide. So it's probably, there's lots of funny scenes in the movie, but that's probably the funniest, and that is he doesn't know what to do because the cop is right here. So, it's not like I can toss it or what do I do? So he comes up with the idea to, insert it in his rectum. So he runs to the back of the van and pulls down, and he's trying to get it. He's trying to get this bag of ecstasy coke, and Liv, she comes around. Nobody knows he's doing that, but she comes around and catches him like doing it, and she's like, what? And he's like, how do you, what'd you say? How the hell do you manage to stuff a ball up your butthole, And she's like, that was only once. Because at first she thought he was asking a hypothetical question, but it turns out he was like asking her from experience. Like, how did you do that? Because I'm trying to get this up here and I can't. That was fucking hilarious. So while he's back there doing that, the cop comes to the rest of them standing in front of the van, and Guy, he's got all this dope like all over him, and first a pin drops and then another pin drops, and she's looks at the ground and looks back up at him, and then another pin drops and then another pin drops, and so all of his like vape pens have fell all over the floor, and then that giant bag of weed just falls out at his feet onto her, and she's like looks at him and is like, you don't have to hide that stuff. He's like, okay. Which, I don't know. Can you have that much weed in a bag and not have to hide it? I'm not sure. But I don't know what state they were in, so who knows. But once all of that hilarious crap is over, he did manage to hide the drugs, by the way. And she says that that your van needs a special tire and the garage doesn't have it. So you're going to have to stay somewhere for tonight. They'll have it tomorrow. So they all like jump on their phone, trying to find an Airbnb or something to stay in for that one night. And one of them finds one at the cop's suggestion. They find one. So they go, and it's like a really nice Airbnb, and all of them go in there, and we see a lot of getting to know these idiots. And they find like 7 deadly sin shot glasses, which, should have been a sign, but it's definitely a sign to the audience watching it. And they kind of argue over who is what, like, who gets lust? Well, that will be LB, and who's envy? That would be Aaron, and who's wrath and all of that. So, meanwhile, of course, LB's like seriously trying to get to the bathroom. He's got to find the bathroom. And while they're sitting there arguing about the shot glasses, he does come back into the kitchen and he like plops it down in the middle of the table, and it still has like a little bit of poop on it and all, and it's like it's funny. It's very funny to me. We then start realizing that they are being watched by CCTV. So this is obviously like a setup, you know. So they're being watched through CCTV, and oh, I thought I had the wrong notes there. We start learning a little bit also about this Colette person that we had seen the flashbacks about. It turns out that she was a friend of theirs, you know. And there's some kind of contention, because you have to remember, well, you haven't seen it. I'll remember for you. Sarah is new to this group. These other 6 people, Aaron and Liv and all of them, they've known each other for years. Sarah is the new person. She's only known them for a few months. So there seems to be some kind of contention about who this Colette person is, because there's contention. It seems to make the group upset when Sarah is asking about who this Colette person is. You know, supposedly it was a person that topped themselves because of bullying by this group. Supposedly she had some sort of, she was in love with Mona, and Mona had to like let her down easy because she was not interested in that. So it was like Mona and LB were together, but Colette liked her. You know, it was one of those dramas. So Sarah's like, okay, whatever. So we get to see a lot of more cool stuff, and then Guy finds out that a certain group is performing and he wants to go now. So he leaves. Now, of course, they've all been snorting cocaine. They've been smoking weed. They're all stoned. And he leaves to go get an Uber or something to go to see this band. And we get to see him go through the woods trying to get to the main highway. And he is tripping balls. Like, he is totally hammered. And he ends up even sitting down and smoking a doobie and tripping with a squirrel. You know, there's this squirrel sitting over here watching him, and he thinks he hallucinates, I guess, but the squirrel starts talking to him, you know, hey man, share that doobie and stuff, and you're like, oh my God. So he's tripping out with this squirrel, and it's actually a pretty good jump scare because you're so laughy and all at him tripping with this squirrel, and the squirrel saying, you know, well, I got a buzz, man, I got to go, you know, and he's like, no, don't leave me, you know. And he stands up to tell the squirrel not to leave him, and he is like tasered and shit. And it's actually a good jump scare because it's not the mood for that. You don't think that's supposed to happen. Well, you do now because this is a spoiler channel. So he wakes up in this Saw-like situation where he is tied down to a chair. He has this oxygen mask put on him, and there's all kind of chemicals creating like a vapor. And above him is the word gluttony. And then the guy like stabs, or the killer like stabs a hose into his stomach and starts pumping it full of all of these drugs and stuff. And it's like the meaning of life, you know, with Monty Python. His stomach like blows up all over the place. It's an extremely gory, you know what I'm saying? It's an extremely gory kill. And, you know, if I didn't mention, I guess I didn't introduce the movie, but it was directed by Marcus Dunstan, written by Josh Sims, and it stars Jade Pettyjohn, JoJo Siwa, and Jennifer Enns, and a whole bunch of others. But it's from the producers of Happy Death Day, and it is from the director of The Collector, if you've ever seen The Collector. So you're basically taking really funny, silly horror comedy, but you're mixing it with Saw and the Collector. So there's it's an interesting mix of silly social media, dipshits, and the whole vibe and atmosphere with very, very serious kills, serious gore. It's a very gory movie. Like Saw and the Collector and all that. So, Guy is now gone. We witnessed that. More argument starts to take place back at the house about this Colette person. And there's all this talk about Colette and who caused it and all of this kind of stuff. And of course, they end up like playing Truth or Dare, spin the bottle, Truth or Dare. And LB and Mona end up going up and starting to make out, but then she thinks someone's in the room. She grabs his phone, because he's recording it, of course, and goes back down into the kitchen, and they all watch the video, because she's like, I know someone was in that room, and they actually see the killer, who is this guy here, with the mask, the electronic mask. So they see it and they're like, I knew someone was in that room. So now they all know something's going on. And they kind of think, well, maybe it was Guy. We know it's not because, like, his guts are all over the wall. Wherever he's at. So tensions are definitely ramping up against all of these people. And they end up, having a fight about who caused what with this Colette person. And Liv ended up saying, I'm going to get an Uber. I'm leaving. So she got someone, the friend of Mona's, offered to come and pick her up, supposedly. So she goes and is going to do that. She runs upstairs to pack her stuff, and Sarah goes with her, and she tells her more about this Colette person. She's like, what you were told was not exactly all of it. Mona played her. It's not like the girl had a crush on her and then Mona just had to let her down and that upset her. That's not the story. The story is Mona played her, strung her along, and all of that kind of crap. That's what hurt her. Not the fact that she was rejected. She was actually not rejected by Mona. Mona did have a relationship with her, strung her along, used her, and then fucked her over. You're like, oh, okay. So maybe that's why she talked herself then. That's why it was so serious, as opposed to just being rejected, So that made a little bit more sense. And then Liv leaves, and thinking that she's going to be picked up, and she is picked up, but it isn't by who she thought she was going to be, and she's taken by this killer. We end up in another Saw situation where she is bound in all kind of gothic leather gear in a tub, and above her is greed, and it's full of boiling vegetable oil. This big giant wash tub is like full of boiling vegetable oil kind of stuff. And he pulls up social media and like puts her on it, something like TikTok or whatever, puts her on it, and is like, if she doesn't get 1,000 hits, she's going to die. So 1,000 likes. So like, people are clicking like and everything, and it gets to 1,000. It's like, oh good, Liv gets to live. But then he hits the down button. It's only $9.99, and the 2 minutes are up. So he like pulls that stuff, and she is boiled alive very graphically when all that hot. It's a very interesting kill. So, there's a lot more interpersonal stuff. LB has stolen Sarah's locket, Sarah had this locket that she's been looking for. And he had actually stolen it because he wants to be the one to find it and give it to her to get some cred so that, he can, like, hit that, I guess. So he goes upstairs, claiming that that's what he's going to do. And he doesn't find her. He thinks that she's in the bed. So he takes off his clothes and is going to, like, hey, I found your locket. And he starts to get in the bed, but it's a blow-up doll. So he jumps up saying, that's real funny, assholes. And then all of a sudden, he is stabbed to death with a big giant dildo knife. In other words, it's a big giant penis and balls, but there's a, like, 4-inch knife sticking out of the head. And he is stabbed to death with this penis dildo knife. And then he is bashed mercilessly. I mean, it's like shoved down his throat. And then he is bashed mercilessly with a baseball bat. I mean, just bashed all to pieces. So that was an interesting kill as well. Now, it's about this time that Aaron arrives, and they think that LB's up there with Sarah. Aaron likes Sarah, so they tell him, hey, I bought the drugs, where's Sarah? She's upstairs banging LB. He runs up there, really upset, and instead he finds this murder scene, but no body. But he finds the murder scene, screaming. He screams, he carries on, they all come running. So who's left? We have Aaron and Sarah and Mona and Will. So those are the 4 that's left. And now they know something is really going on, and they find this door unlocked when they're trying to get out. They find a door unlocked that they had previously none of them had been able to get into. So they find this unlocked door, and they go into this basement, and this is the whole final act. Takes place down here. That shack where that girl topped herself has been meticulously recreated in this basement. And past it, through a room, there's the 7 deadly sin scenes, and they see the bodies of LB under lust, and Liv under greed, and Guy under gluttony. Very, very interesting. And they know shit's going down. The basement door is, of course, locked behind them. And they're stuck down there, and then the killer presents himself, and mayhem ensues. And it's really, really a bunch of really good duck, dodge, weave, silly, very gory. They managed to last for a while in fighting with this killer. Will is the first one to get it. He gets, like, a big axe through his back. He's still alive, though. He tries to crawl away. That's a really intense kill scene. He then gets beheaded. He's taken and he's thrown into a chair under the word sloth. And what was interesting about this is it wasn't like a normal beheading, though. The axe is swung. So instead of hitting here and beheading him, it just hits in his mouth. And it cuts this whole top of his head, and it goes slinging off. And it's like, that's pretty cool. That's not the usual beheadings that we see. Sort of half a beheading. So, and like I said, this movie is very, very graphic, very, very gory. So they do show all of this, and it's not cool to see him. He was actually my favorite character, Will. It's none of your business why. But he was actually my favorite character. Mona is... I can't stand Mona, but at the same time, she's like the toughest one. So it was cool watching her fight because she kicked ass for a social media influencer slut, which is what she was. The kind of person you just love to hate. She kicked ass exquisitely, though. She ended up, like, getting a couple of stabs in the killer, and then we have, like, Aaron is really bad. They run back up the stairs. The basement door is shut. Aaron gets, like, mercilessly stabbed to death. Brutally stabbed to death. And it takes forever to kill him, too. He's, like, stabbed, like, 10 times, and he's still fucking walking. They end up, like, stabbing him right there. And he says a bunch of funny stuff while he's getting stabbed, too, which is funny. Because he's like, no, don't do that. I don't want to die a virgin. You know. And you're like, is really that what you're worrying about at this time? I mean, you're, like, full of holes, and you're worrying about dying as a virgin. Well, you know. But I think that's supposed to show you the airheadedness of these social media people. So he gets brutally killed. So there's only Mona and Sarah and this killer left. And, you know, Mona was going to win. I'm telling you right now. If you watch this movie, Mona was going to win. She had already stabbed the killer a couple of times, and she had the upper hand. She was going to win. And then all of a sudden, you know, she hollers for Sarah to, like, get the other knife, because, you know, the killer's been using these 2 big knives, you know, slice and dicey. So she's like, get the other knife, because she's almost got her, or she's almost got the killer. And then Sarah reaches up and cuts Mona's throat. And you're like, what? What? I was like all up into this shit now, and you just did what? So, right as that happened, she tore the mask off of Mona tore the mask off of the killer, and it was that cop. It was that lady cop. Officer Shaw. So you're like, you know what? This has been pretty cool as far as, I had no idea. They certainly didn't leave you any clues. You know, I mean, this is the second time I watched it to write these notes, and I watched it last night. I watched all of these last night. These 4 that I'm filming right now. And I was paying attention to particularly any clues that would lead me to Sarah or Officer Shaw, and there isn't any. I didn't find any. Go watch it and see if you can find it. Of course, now you know everything, so that's what you get, though. So you're like, why? And then Sarah starts explaining, because, you know, Mona's, of course, holding her throat together. You know, she's bleeding, but she's not dying as quickly as she would because she's holding her stuff together. And then Sarah starts explaining it. So let me do that for you now. So, Colette, this all was true. Colette was a longtime friend of these people. She was obviously gay. She fell in love with Mona. Mona was seeing LB. But instead of rejecting her, Mona played her. Mona played along, broke her heart, used her, abused her, broke her heart, all while still maintaining her social influence status, you know. What she didn't know was that Colette had went and met another person who had fell in love, who she fell in love with, and whom had fallen in love with her, who was not exactly sane, and that is Sarah. So Sarah was actually Colette's girlfriend after the incidents. So she had went to top herself. That locket had a picture of Colette in it. That's why she had been so desperate to find it. You know, after LB had lost it, you know, she was asking everybody to help her find it. Plus it would have ruined her plan, right? So she had went to top herself, and Officer Shaw had saw her up on the overpass, gonna jump, and had went and saved her life, basically. And they were now together. So you're like, oh, okay. Well, what people won't do for love, right? You just slaughtered a bunch of people. So that explains it, right? And I know what y'all did. Y'all did this to her. Y'all murdered her. You took my life away from me, so I'm taking your life away from you, blah, blah, blah. The typical revenge, all the way back to Terror Train and Friday the 13th. You know, it's always this type of revenge. Not always, but mostly. So, she then, well, kicks Mona in the face, which, like, really opens up the hole and blood spurts everywhere and she dies. And they're all very satisfied with themselves. Them two are very satisfied with themselves. And she makes the fake call to the police, you know, help, help, somebody's trying to kill me. Somebody's killing all my friends, blah, blah, blah. The cops come and question, and it looks like the serial killer from 20 years ago has returned, right? It's the same setup. Because, of course, they had time to, like, put the bodies in the correct 7 deadly sin spots, so it all looked just like 20 years ago. However, a problem occurs out back when Shaw, you know, gets Sarah away from the cops, you know, give her a break, let her have some air. And they're talking about how it'll all be all fine now. But Shaw does say there's one thing that's always bothered me, and that is that video that you showed them. You know, the video of the shack burning down and the 6 of them in front of it. Who was taking that video? Where did you get that video from? And that's when Sarah admitted, okay, there's one more thing to this. Colette didn't top herself. What happened was, I was so mad about what had been done to her that I got into LB's friends list and got a hold of Mona and tricked her into coming to the shack where I was planning on taking her out. Unbeknownst to me, though, Colette found out that that's what I was going to do, and she came to this shack to stop me. I didn't know that, so when the door opened and the person ran in, I thought it was Mona. I shot Colette, so she killed her own girlfriend. And in her mind, they made her kill her girlfriend. Accidentally. So she carved their names by her head, made it look like she'd topped herself. And then Mona did arrive, and called the other 5, and they arrived. And because their names were there, they didn't want to get blamed for it, so they set the place on fire. You're like, oh, okay. It's pretty cool. Then she's like, and there's one more part of the plan. And she grabs Shaw's gun. And Shaw's like, but what are you doing that for? You can't do that. Keep your, get your hands off my gun, And she's like, well, there's one more part of the plan, and I've got to get away with this. So the other cops come running around the corner, and Shaw had, took her gun back from Sarah. And then Sarah starts screaming, she's trying to kill me, she's trying to kill me, she's the one who did all of this. And I'm like, bitch, no. What a bitch, right? So Shaw is so hurt. You can see it on her face. She is so hurt and upset that she actually does raise the gun. Like, fuck you, bitch. And they blow her ass away, so she gets blamed for it all. And Sarah gets away scot-free. Possibly. Now it's daylight. Everything has happened. Liv and Mona's agent, social media agent, called her and is like, hey man, you hit the big time. You'll be all over social media. We can make you an account. And she's like, I'm not interested in that. So she hangs up on him. And then another phone call comes in, and it's like, hi, Sarah. And she's like, she thought it was Rick again, that agent guy. So she's like, I am not interested in that, Rick. Leave me alone. And started to hang up, and he's like, who's Rick? And she's like, well, who is this? And he's like, the guy that you've really pissed off. And she's like, well, how did I piss you off? And he's like, pretending to be me. So it was the real SDSK killer who's now seen all of this news, seen all of these social media shit, and knows that someone has copycatted him. Because that's what he says. You know, he's like, who is this? The guy you tried to copycat. And you've really pissed me off. And so I just want to let you know, as of right now, everyone you know is dead. And then he hangs up on her. And she looks at the camera and she's like, oh, fuck. And the movie goes off. And so during the credits, and I wish it was true. It's probably not, but I hope it's true. But the credits roll, and then there's a thing that says, right after she had said that, the credits started rolling, and this little thing come up that said, everyone I know is dead, coming soon. And I'm like, I would really like that. I mean, if that was a joke for the end credits, I understand. But, you know, if y'all could really do everyone I know is dead, you know, so that please let Sarah get what she deserves. I would love to see the sequel for this. So like I said, I had a huge amount of popcorn slasher mindless fun with this movie. It is really, really good. Well, I give it a 7.9 out of 10. I even, put it on my top list. I liked everyone. I gave it an 8 out of 10 on International Movie Database because I gave it a 7.9. So I round up, especially with horror. You always have to round up with horror on International Movie Database because everybody fucking hates horror. They always troll our movies with low ratings, 1s and 2s. Pieces of shit. I should do that to all of their movies, The Sound of Music and whatever stupid shit they watch. I should all go put 1s on everything. All of their goody two-shoe movies, since they wanted hate on horror so much. Sounds like a plan, but I'm not that petty. I save my 1s for who really deserves it. But yeah, like I said, I had a huge amount of fun with this. It's exactly what I wanted. Formulaic clone, slasher clone, pretty people in peril. A good backstory, nice vengeance, good twists, and the kills were phenomenal. The kills were really, really good. So I really liked this movie. It does exactly what I want a silly little slasher to do for me. It did the same thing that, all the others have. Terror Train. It's Terror Train in a cabin. It's Terror Train in an Airbnb is what this is. I'm fine with them all being the same. I love slashers and I love clones. And so, yeah, I had a really good time with this movie. If you've seen it and hate it, let me know. If you haven't seen it, you really should. It's really good. If you know what you're looking for, if you're okay with just a run-of-the-mill slasher. I really enjoyed it. I think they did a really good job on this. And I do hope there's a sequel. And I will see you in the next thing I do. Love you, miss you, but always remember, never forget, you're a very, very special person. And this has been All My Friends Are Dead. Hashtag AMFAD. And I really hope there's a sequel. Yep. Love this movie. Really good. It's a shame that it's only on DVD. But it's a beautiful transfer on DVD. I mean, it says there was no grain or anything. Well, I mean, the bad type of grain. It was a really nice SD transfer, is all I can say. It's really good. It looked beautiful. So, yeah. See you in the next. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Let me know what you think. Get it. You'll like it.